The invasion begins. The night sky over Earth was calm. Millions of people were asleep, unaware of what was coming. High above the planet, hidden beyond the moon, a massive alien fleet waited. Their dark ships floated silently, like predators watching their prey. Commander Vorin of the Zorthan Empire stood inside his warship, looking at the blue planet. His golden eyes burned with confidence. "Earth is weak," he said. "This will be over quickly." The Zorthans had conquered hundreds of worlds. They believed Earth would be the same. No space fleet, no advanced weapons, no defense against them. It was just another easy target. Vorin turned to his officers. "Begin the invasion." The first attack. From the dark void of space, thousands of Zorthan ships shot toward Earth. Their plan was simple: destroy all military bases in the first strike, take control of major cities, and force humanity to surrender. The attack began at midnight. The first blasts hit communication satellites, cutting off Earth's ability to warn itself. Then, massive plasma cannons fired at military bases across the world. Explosions shook the ground. In seconds, several bases were reduced to burning rubble. People woke up to chaos. The sky glowed red as alien ships rained destruction. Buildings collapsed, streets were in flames, and terrified screams filled the air. The invaders thought fear would break the humans, but they were wrong. The unexpected resistance. At a secret military bunker, General Carter watched the attack unfold. His jaw tightened. The enemy was fast, but he had seen worse. Humans had survived countless wars, disasters, and near-extinction events. This was no different. He picked up the radio. "All forces, listen up. We are under attack, but we do not surrender. We fight." Across the world, something the Zorthans didn't expect happened. Instead of panic, humanity fought back. Fighter jets launched into the sky, dodging alien lasers and returning fire. Anti-air weapons locked onto enemy ships, blasting them out of the air. Civilians didn't run. They armed themselves and prepared to defend their homes. In the city of Tokyo, a Zorthan ship hovered above a large street. Its commander watched humans gather below, confused. Why were they not running? Then, from the rooftops, a missile launcher fired. A direct hit. The ship exploded, sending flaming metal crashing into the streets. Humans had just destroyed their first enemy ship. The aliens' shock. Back on the Zorthan flagship, Commander Vorin watched in disbelief. His officers panicked. "Sir, they're fighting back." The commander's golden eyes narrowed. Impossible. This was not how it was supposed to go. Other planets had begged for mercy. Other species had fallen within hours. But these humans, they were different. Then came more bad news. "Sir, we've lost 5 ships over Europe. Their forces are adapting too fast." Adapting. Vorin gritted his teeth. No species had ever adapted to their attacks this quickly. He had underestimated them. This was no simple conquest anymore. He turned to his officers. "Increase firepower. Wipe them out. The battle intensifies." The next wave of the invasion was brutal. Giant alien war machines landed in cities, unleashing destruction. More ships entered Earth's atmosphere, dropping elite Zorthan warriors onto the streets. But Earth had something stronger than advanced weapons: human resilience. In New York, soldiers and police worked together, taking out alien troops in the streets. In Russia, old missile silos, thought to be abandoned, suddenly roared to life, launching deadly rockets at enemy ships. In Brazil, civilians set traps in the jungles, luring Zorthan soldiers into ambushes. The more the Zorthans fought, the more they realized their mistake. The humans were not weak. They were relentless. A war unlike any other. By dawn, Earth was still burning, but it was not conquered. The Zorthan fleet had lost dozens of ships. Thousands of their soldiers lay dead. Vorin stared at the battle reports, his confidence gone. No other species had ever resisted them like this. One of his officers approached. "Sir, what are your orders?" The commander clenched his fists. "We finish what we started, no matter what it takes." But deep inside, he had a terrible feeling. Maybe, just maybe, the Zorthan Empire had made a mistake. Humanity strikes back. The night had been long, filled with fire and death, but Earth was still standing. The alien invaders expected surrender. Instead, they found war. From his warship, Commander Exalvoran watched as explosions erupted across the planet. He gritted his teeth. No species had ever lasted this long against the Zorthan Empire. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Varkesh, approached. "Sir, our ground forces are reporting difficulty." Exalvoran turned sharply. "Difficulty?" Varkesh hesitated. "The humans. They're fighting like animals. They are not following any predictable battle patterns. They attack, disappear, and attack again." The commander's golden eyes narrowed. This was not a war. This was a nightmare. The silent resistance. In a ruined city, under the cover of darkness, a group of human soldiers moved silently. Captain James Cole led the team. His face was smeared with dirt, his uniform torn, but his eyes were sharp. Above them, an alien patrol hovered in the sky, scanning for survivors. One wrong move, and they'd be vaporized. Cole signaled his team to halt. They waited. Then, boom. From another street, a distant explosion shook the air. The alien patrol turned, distracted. That was their chance. "Go," Cole whispered. They moved like ghosts, slipping through the rubble, unseen, unheard. This was not a battle fought with brute force. It was fought with human intelligence. The aliens began to fear. Back on the Zorthan flagship, Varkesh played the latest battle reports. What he saw made his blood run cold. A human squad had disabled an entire alien command center using only EMP bombs. The lone human sniper had taken out an elite Zorthan officer from over a mile away. In the Amazon rainforest, Zorthan troops were being hunted, but no one knew by what. Varkesh clenched his fists. This was not how it was supposed to be. "Sir," he turned to Exalvoran, "these humans, they are unpredictable." The commander's expression darkened. He had seen many wars, but this one felt different. The Zorthan Empire was powerful, but Earth was proving to be something else entirely. A species that refused to bow. A species that refused to die. A message to the invaders. Deep inside an underground bunker, General Carter sat before a radio. His voice was calm but firm. He was speaking directly to the Zorthan fleet. "You thought we would surrender. You thought we would break. You thought we were just another weak species to crush under your boots." He paused. Then he smiled. "You were wrong." Across the world, humans listened. Soldiers, civilians, survivors, they all heard the message. And for the first time, the aliens heard fear in their own hearts. Exalvoran's dilemma. Back on the flagship, the message echoed through the command deck. The Zorthan officers stood in stunned silence. No one had ever spoken to them like this before. No one had ever dared. Exalvoran stared at the screen. The humans were not fighting for power. They were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for survival. And that made them the most dangerous enemy of all. He turned to his officers. "We underestimated them. No more mistakes. No more mercy. We end this now." But deep inside, for the first time in his life, Commander Exalvoran felt something strange. Doubt. The turning point. The battle for Earth had raged for days. Cities lay in ruins. The sky was filled with the glow of burning wreckage. And yet, humanity still fought. The Zorthan invaders, an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds, now faced something they had never encountered before, an enemy that refused to break. The trap is set. In a hidden command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Carter studied a holographic map. His officers stood around him, their faces grim but determined. "They think we're retreating," Carter said. "Good. Let them." He pointed to the screen. The Zorthans had advanced deep into human territory, but Carter knew one thing: the deeper they came, the harder it would be for them to leave. Operation Ghostfire is a go. The officers nodded. The message was sent. Across the world, resistance cells received their orders. It was time to turn the hunters into prey. The first strike. Commander Exalvoran watched from his flagship, a smirk forming on his reptilian face. The battle reports were clear. Humans were retreating. Their forces were scattering, abandoning cities, heading into mountains, forests, and underground tunnels. "At last," he muttered, "they're breaking." But then, something changed. The attacks didn't stop. In fact, they increased. Ambushes, explosions, disappearances. Entire Zorthan platoons vanished in the jungles of South America. A fleet of ground transports was wiped out in the ruins of Tokyo. In the Arctic, an entire alien research base was overrun by a force they never even saw. Zalvoran's smirk faded. The humans weren't running. They were hunting. Fear spreads among the invaders. Lieutenant Varkesh stood before his commander, his scales a shade paler than usual. "Sir, our forces are reporting something strange." Zalvoran glared. "Speak." Varkesh hesitated before continuing. "They say the humans. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't form battle lines. They don't surrender. They just disappear. And when they return, they strike with precision." Zalvoran clenched his jaw. This wasn't war. This was something else. Something far more terrifying. A message from the shadows. On every Zorthan screen, across every ship and base, a human face appeared. General Carter. His voice was calm. His eyes were cold. "You came to our world, expecting an easy victory. You thought we would kneel. You were wrong." He leaned forward. "We are humans. We adapt. We endure. We fight." The message cut off. Silence filled the Zorthan command room. For the first time in history, an empire that had never lost a war felt the weight of uncertainty. Zalvoran exhaled slowly. The war was changing. And for the first time, the Zorthans were losing. The battle for Earth. The war had shifted. The hunters had become the hunted. Earth was no longer a battleground. It was a death trap. The Zorthan invaders, once arrogant and unstoppable, were now afraid. Their fleets had superior firepower. Their soldiers had advanced technology. But none of it mattered. Because humans didn't fight wars the way the galaxy expected. The nightmare begins. Commander Exalvoran gripped the edges of his command console. His golden eyes flickered across the battle reports. "Impossible," he whispered. "We had them cornered. They should be defeated by now." But the reports told a different story. Entire battalions missing in the Siberian tundra. Supply routes cut off in the African deserts. Zorthan warships crashing after being struck by human sabotage teams. And worst of all, the humans never fought face to face. They were shadows, ghosts, striking, vanishing, striking again. Lieutenant Varkesh swallowed hard. "Sir, some of the troops are refusing to go out at night." Zalvoran's claws tightened. "Cowards." Varkesh hesitated. "No, sir. They say something is out there, watching them." The commander laughed bitterly. There is nothing out there but humans. But deep down, he wasn't so sure anymore. Humanity's last stand, or its greatest victory. At an underground base in the ruins of Washington, D.C., General Carter stood before a holographic map. His officers looked at him, waiting. "They're scared," he said, tapping the table. "Now we finish this." Captain James Cole smirked. "What's the plan?" "Sir." Carter's eyes gleamed. "We take the fight to them." The officers murmured. It was risky. The Zorthans still had firepower. One mistake could mean the end of humanity. But Carter smiled. They think we fight like every other species they've conquered. That's why they're losing. We don't fight to win battles. We fight to survive. He pointed to the map. And survival means making sure they never come back. The Zorthan Empire faces the unthinkable. Zalvorin watched the live feed from one of his ships. It showed a human city, one they had bombed into the ground. And yet, there were people moving inside it. How? He growled. How do they keep fighting? Then the screen flickered. A new face appeared. General Carter. He was bruised, bloodied, but still standing. Still fighting. You made a mistake, Commander, Carter said. Zalvorin leaned forward, heart pounding. You thought we'd fight like a normal army. Line up, march forward, fall when overwhelmed. Carter shook his head. You didn't realize. Humans don't fight wars. We end them. Suddenly, alarms blared across the Zorthan fleet. Explosions rocked their warships. The humans had infiltrated their own motherships, using stolen technology to override security. They weren't just fighting back. They were taking the war straight into the enemy's heart. The final blow. On Earth, in the forests, in the deserts, in the ruins of cities, humanity struck with everything it had. Hackers disabled Zorthan targeting systems. Soldiers hijacked enemy weapons and turned them against their creators. Resistance fighters launched coordinated attacks, forcing the aliens into chaos. And then, the motherships started falling. One by one, the great warships that had once darkened the skies of Earth crashed back down to the planet. Zalvorin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in horror as his invasion force collapsed. This wasn't supposed to happen. No species had ever won against the Zorthan Empire. And yet, Earth was still standing. Humanity was still fighting. And for the first time in his life, Zalvorin understood what true fear was. The fall of the Zorthan Empire. The war was no longer about Earth's survival. Now, it was about revenge. The humans had endured the worst the Zorthan Empire could throw at them, and survived. But survival wasn't enough. Not anymore. Now, humanity was hunting them down. The Zorthans are running. Zalvorin had never experienced fear before. As a commander of the mighty Zorthan Empire, he had crushed dozens of civilizations. He had seen entire planets turned into nothing but lifeless husks. But this was different. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. Zorthan warships that once ruled the skies now fled in panic. Their commanders sent desperate distress signals across the galaxy. No one answered. The final stand of Zalvorin, deep in the ruined remains of the Zorthan flagship, Dreadfang. Zalvorin paced, his claws digging into the metal floor. Every report was worse than the last. Fleet command, gone. Ground forces, decimated. Motherships, falling one by one. His second-in-command, Varkesh, approached with shaking hands. Sir, we have to retreat. Zalvorin turned, eyes burning with fury. Retreat. From primitives. But Varkesh said nothing. There was nothing left to say. For the first time in history, the Zorthans had found an enemy they couldn't defeat. The humans strike back. At a hidden military base in the Rocky Mountains, General Carter stood before a silent command center. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won. But there was still one final step. Carter's voice was cold, determined. They came to burn Earth. Now we burn them. Captain James Cole grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. Across the planet, hidden human bases activated. Newly captured alien ships roared to life. For the first time, humans weren't just defending Earth. Now, they were taking the fight to the stars. Zalvorin's last mistake. On board the Dreadfang, Zalvorin stood on the bridge, staring at the sensors. Something was coming. No, many things. Hundreds of ships. Not Zorthan reinforcements. Not another alien empire. It was humanity. His soldiers whispered in horror. They've captured our technology. The impossible was now reality. The humans had reverse-engineered the very weapons that were meant to destroy them, and now they were using them against their creators. The first human fleet takes flight. As the first wave of human-controlled warships blasted through the void, a new era had begun. Earth was no longer just another planet in the galaxy. Humanity was no longer a species to be conquered. Now, they were the conquerors. And as the last remnants of the Zorthan invasion force were wiped from existence, one final message was transmitted across the galaxy. A warning. A promise. We are human. We do not forgive. We do not forget. If you come for us, we will come for you. Humanity's revenge. The battle for Earth had ended, but the war was far from over. Humanity had survived the impossible. They had beaten an empire that had ruled the stars for centuries. But survival wasn't enough. Not anymore. Now, the galaxy needed to learn a lesson. The hunt begins. The Zorthan Empire was collapsing. What was once a mighty galactic force had now become a fractured, desperate shadow of itself. Admiral James Cole stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance, humanity's first fully operational alien warship. A stolen monster, rebuilt and improved with human ingenuity. His target, the Zorthan homeworld. The Galactic Council had already declared humanity a reckless, dangerous species. They begged Earth to stop, to negotiate. But the humans only had one response. You didn't negotiate with us when you invaded. Now, it's our turn. The Zorthan's desperate plea. Deep within the last stronghold of the Zorthan Empire, Supreme Chancellor Zalvorin's voice shook with desperation. We must surrender. We must beg for mercy. His war council sat in stunned silence. Beg? The mighty Zorthans. Varkesh, his last surviving general, growled, humans don't show mercy. They'd burn everything. And he was right. The first reports were already coming in. Human strike teams were hitting Zorthan colonies, liberating prisoners, destroying military outposts, leaving nothing but ruin behind. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were hunting their enemy to extinction. The arrival of the Vengeance. A lone ship arrived at the Zorthan homeworld. It wasn't a fleet, just one ship. And yet, every Zorthan knew what it meant. The USS Vengeance hovered over the capital, its massive cannons aimed at the heart of the Empire. The last remnants of the Zorthan fleet surrounded their planet, trembling. A message was broadcast across the entire world. Admiral Cole's voice was cold, unshaken. Surrender, or be erased from history. For the first time in their long reign, the Zorthans felt true fear. They had invaded Earth with arrogance. Now, Earth had come for them, with wrath. The final choice. Inside the Zorthan war chamber, Chancellor Zalvorin clenched his fists. If they surrendered, they would be enslaved, humiliated, forever broken. But if they fought, there was no chance of victory. He took a deep breath. He had made his decision. His clawed hand pressed a final command into the war console. Across the planet, hidden doomsday weapons powered up. If the Zorthans were going to fall, they would take humanity with them. Humanity's next move. On board the USS Vengeance, alarms blared. Admiral, massive energy spikes detected. They're activating some kind of planetary weapon. Admiral Cole narrowed his eyes. The Zorthans had made their choice. His next order would decide the fate of an entire world. And he didn't hesitate. Launch the strike. End this. The end of an empire. The war had led to this final moment. Earth had been attacked. Millions had died. Humanity had suffered. But now, it was time to finish what the Zorthans had started. The last stand of the Zorthan Empire. Chancellor Zalvorin stood in his war chamber, his claws shaking as the countdown reached its final seconds. Their last defense, the planetary eradication array, was now online. One final desperate attack. If they couldn't win, then they would burn their world and take humanity with them. Fire the weapon. Alvoran roared. The massive energy cannon beneath the capital city began to glow, preparing to unleash devastation across the stars. But before it could fire, the sky erupted. The wrath of Earth. The U.S. vengeance had arrived. And it wasn't alone. Behind it, an entire fleet of human-controlled warships descended upon the Zorthan homeworld. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to end the war. Admiral Cole stood on the bridge, watching the battlefield unfold before him. Zorthan defense stations exploded one by one, their warships obliterated in seconds. The humans had stolen alien technology and improved it. Earth's fleet was no longer inferior, it was superior. And now, they were unstoppable. The death of Alvoran. In his burning war chamber, Alvoran fell to his knees. This couldn't be happening. The great Zorthan Empire, the rulers of the stars, the conquerors of countless worlds, destroyed by mere humans. He stared at the holographic display, watching in horror as human dropships landed across the planet. Armored human soldiers stormed the capital, wiping out the last of his warriors. A deafening explosion shook the city, the planetary cannon. Their last hope was gone. Alvoran clenched his fists as the doors to his chamber burst open. Admiral James Cole walked in, a human, a species they had once considered weak, now standing before him as the executioner of his empire. Cole looked down at the defeated chancellor. There was no mercy in his eyes. "There was a time when we might have let you live," Cole said. "That time is over." Alvoran let out a final, guttural snarl. Then Cole pulled the trigger. With a single gunshot, the Zorthan Empire died. Humanity's rise. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched in stunned silence. The mighty Zorthan Empire had been erased, and in its place, a new power had risen. Earth was no longer just another planet. Humanity was no longer just another species. They had proven to the stars that they were not to be trifled with. The message was clear. If you come for Earth, Earth will come for you. Epilogue. The dawn of a new era. Months later, the first official human fleet was launched into deep space. This time, they weren't running. They weren't hiding. They were claiming their place among the stars. As the massive fleet disappeared into the void, a new legend began to spread across the galaxy. The legend of humanity. The species that had survived the impossible. The species that had fought back. The species that had conquered their conquerors. And now, the universe would never be the same again.